Hey, what's going on? This is At the Letters presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer. Arden Swelling and Ben Nicholson Smith, our producers this week, are Almal Delich and Mike Tassoni. And today is Thursday, April the 15th. Ben, midway through the first half of the first month of the second pandemic MLB season. And so you had actually dropped into the show notes here that the Blue Jays are 6-6. And if you had not done that, I would not have even been able to tell you what record the Blue Jays hold, how many games they've won and lost, but I would have estimated, like I would have guessed that they were below 500. So considering everything that has happened for them to be just like, humming along at 500, it's not so bad.
Yeah, they're not in a bad spot. And I agree. I mean, I haven't been refreshing the standings page very often at all. I think today was the first time I did. The Red Sox, I think, are 9-3, so that's kind of surprising.
We haven't had Christian Ryan producing in a couple weeks, but he would be insufferable right now.
Very
about that.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Noted Red Sox fan, Christian Ryan. Go ahead.
It's been an interesting start to the year for the Jays, and I think when you look at the 6 games against the Yankees, which that's half their schedule at this point, to be 4-2 against the Yankees, to have overcome these injuries, to be in a spot where they are playing some pretty good baseball, that's not bad.
Yeah, well, a lot of things have been happening. Like, it seems like every day the Charlie Montoyo Zoom is just like, yep, Charlie's going to go off the top, and somebody's been scratched from a start, somebody's going to the IL, someone's got COVID, somebody's had a setback in their recovery. I mean, it's just, it's every day there has been some sort of adversity for this club. So yeah, I mean, getting 500 through mid-April is fine. I think if you're 500 through the end of April, I think you feel fine about your team. You haven't dug yourself a big hole. Obviously, you haven't gone up by a ton in the standings, but I think that's a fine place to be for a club.
Absolutely. And you have to keep in mind, too, I mean, George Springer hasn't played a game for this team, and he's their best player. And, we've obviously won't see Kirby Yates all year. There have been other significant injuries to this team. So it's not just that they're 6-6 or just that they're 6-6 against some good competition, but it's really in the face of some big injuries. And, I think as much as we might like to fantasize about the day when, all right, the whole team is back and everyone's healthy, the reality is they're going to have to juggle injuries all year. So this is part of an ongoing challenge, but it's one that they've risen to so far.
Yeah, you kind of hear some of what's the playoff rotation going to look like? Like, what's this team going to look like in September? I don't know, man. What's this team going to look like next week? Dude, yeah. Like, how's this team going to get through April? Like, forget about September or October. So, like, here's just a couple of things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. George Springer, still sidelined with quad issue, as you said, has yet to play a game for the Toronto Blue Jays. Julian Merriweather is on the 10-day IL now with a strained oblique. Tyler Chatwood is on the 10-day IL with a triceps issue. Ross Stripling was scratched from a start this week 2 hours prior to first pitch with forearm tightness. And Teoscar Hernandez has COVID-19 and is in isolation and is away from the team. We kind of talked all spring, Ben, about how depth was going to be tested and about how like the 2021 season was going to be a true test of your 40-man roster and organizational depth. And man, here we are, and it has materialized in a very big way for the Blue Jays.
Absolutely. And yeah, this depth is getting tested. I think, especially when these injuries come in the midst of a stretch where they have 16 scheduled games in a row, there's no time to catch their breath. That'll come a bit later in the month when they have 4 off days. But, so far it's been every single day they have to make these adjustments. And so, that latest injury to Ross Stripling really forces the team then to adjust. Okay, this means TJ Zwick is coming in, and then Trent Thornton has to be used. So those guys are not candidates to start that opening game of the Royals series. And somehow, thanks to a Bo Bichette walk-off home run and a 2-home run day from Bo, they end up winning that game, and that's great. But of course, there's that kind of cascading challenge of what do you do the next day? What do you do the day after that? Because the pitching staff in particular is really taking a toll.
And it's not just the Blue Jays is what is kind of important to remember. Like, this is MLB wide. Everyone across the game coming into this season was terrified about the health ramifications of coming off of 60 and going into 162. The virus obviously still being very prevalent in communities. And yeah, I mean, 2 weeks in, everyone's fears have materialized. Like, look, let me just I'll just pull up on roster resource here, like the league wide injury report. And like right off the top, you see like 5 Houston Astros, because Houston's having their own COVID situation right now. And that includes, by the way, Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez. There's like 2 MVP candidates in there that the Houston Astros are without. And then even just like in the last week, players to hit IL, Max Fried, Christian Pash, Lorenzo Cain, Max Stassi, Miguel Cabrera, Anthony Rendon, Archie Bradley, Tyler O'Neill, Chris Archer, Julio Teheran, Dexter Fowler, Colton Wong. I mean, it's just like, it's rampant across MLB. It's like every club is dealing with injury adversity and is dealing with like not only obviously the COVID side of things, but also the like soft tissue and workload side of things and the routines being disrupted side of things. And so really it's what the Blue Jays are going through right now. Like it's certainly tough, and it's making them test reach into their 40-man and test their depth, but it's not exactly exceptional in the global landscape of MLB.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think every team, you're very right to say that every team is dealing with this. I think this is more than I would have expected for the Jays, and I think it's more than average for the Jays. At the same time, all right, you have to deal with that. There will be other months this season where the Jays have fewer injuries than average, and other teams will have it worse. So, as you say, it's a test of that depth. It's a test of, can Santiago Espinal and Josh Palacios and TJ Zoik come up, Joel Payamps, Anthony Castro. Some of those guys have done pretty well. So that's a sign that the depth of this 40-man roster can hold its own at least a little bit. And so that's going to have to continue, because these injuries in a lot of cases are not just super short term. Like in the case of Merriweather, for instance, and he's probably the guy that, as we were talking about last week, we're talking about him as a huge difference maker for this team potentially. Well, he might be out for an extended period. We don't know. So that means that depth will continue to get chances.
Yeah, all season. It's going to be the thing all year, because look, no club really knows how to prevent injuries. This is like the new frontier in baseball, but it is how to manage health and how to manage workloads and how to keep players on the field. And I don't think that any team really has a great handle on it. I think teams are trying to figure it out. All we know about injuries and about health, I think, is that it's more likely to happen when you're fatigued. Right. So tired players have sort of more trouble maintaining like strong physical positions. They kind of like mentally they react a little bit, a little more slowly. Maybe they haven't fully recovered from sort of the stress and the workload that they experienced during their last bout of like playing a game or training. And so like all of a sudden, that little sort of grab in your back or that sort of dull pain in your calf, that soreness in your hip, Julian Merriweather, it worsens, gets inflamed. Now all of a sudden, you're trying to do something explosive like throwing a ball, a baseball 99, 100 miles an hour, and boom, now it's an injury. And that's going to be a reality all season is what I'm saying, because the schedule is what it is. Like you said, 16 scheduled days in 16 days. And there's a lot of travel in there as well. And the travel is what it is. So like as a team, all you can do is just try to manage that workload and just try to manage that fatigue and combat it. Don't get upset when you see that the Blue Jays are giving a guy a day off or giving a guy DH at bats, or the fact that I haven't looked it up, but I would bet you the Blue Jays have played 12 games. I bet you they've used probably 10 different lineups. Don't get upset about that. Like, this is how teams manage that fatigue and that workload. It's even stuff away from games. Like, you'll see pitchers skipping bullpens. You'll see pitchers getting bumped back a day like Hyun-Jin Ryu has. And Ryu is a guy who all the time skips bullpens in between outings, just to try to, avoid injuries, stay his best, stay as rested and capable as he can. This is all you can really do to try to prevent some of these scenarios.
Right. And, as much as teams will try and should try, of course, to prevent injuries and keep players healthy, I just don't think it's ever going to happen. And maybe that's like an overly defeatist mindset or viewpoint to have with this. But as long as you have these guys out there playing 162 games and putting max effort into their swings and into their pitches, like, how could you not have some injuries? It's going to happen. So it's really a question of how good are your guys when they're healthy and who's next when it comes time to backfill and replace.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to move to a point, and this is somewhere, years down the line, but where you just lighten the schedule. There's just fewer games played in a regular season, and every Monday is an off day for every team or something like that. Like that's the only way it's going to happen. So as it pertains to Blue Jays pitching, you've got what right now, Ben? Like 3 starters you feel good about? Ryu, Ray, Mats?
Yeah.
Is that about it?
Yeah. Which is honestly, I mean, that's probably 2 more than they would have had at most points in the last couple seasons, So like last year, obviously they had Ryu, Walker was good for a while, Shoemaker was good for a while. In 2019, like they had like a 1-man rotation. Like it was, They had nothing. They had absolutely nothing, to the point that signing Tanner Roark was like, oh my goodness, they got some stability. This is so good. So they've come a long way in a sense, and we don't know how long Ray and Nats are going to look good. But at this point, I would say they have 3 starters that you feel pretty good about.
So for the rest of the month, you're trying to maximize the amount of outings that those guys pitch. And I think there's a way to do that because you've got 4 off days later this month. Like you got a weird kind of stretch where there's like 4 off days in the span of like 10 or 11 days there. So the Blue Jays can actually sort of get creative and find a way over their remaining 12 or so games this month to actually have those 3 guys start like 9 of them. And then, and you can do that with like still having Hyunjin Ryu on, getting his 5 days rest. You could have everybody get their 5 days rest. And then, so you've got sort of, and this is dangerous trying to plan things out that far in advance, because just watch, Robbie Ray will come out of his next start with something, or Steven Matz something will happen to bullpen or whatever. But you can kind of pencil that in and chart that out. And then you're just kind of filling in between with like a TJ Zoik outing here, a Tanner Roark outing there. We'll see how Ross Stripling's feeling and what this forearm thing is going to lead to. Maybe Anthony Kay comes up and makes a start. Maybe you have like a sort of weird bullpen day where like, if Chatwood's fine and comes off the IL at some point, he opens for Trent Thornton or something like that. But I think that's what we, the goal right now, starting pitching wise for the Blue Jays over the rest of the month, is just to maximize the amount of Ryu, Mats, and Ray that they're using.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. And I think when you look at how they can do it without necessarily having to push those guys beyond their normal threshold, then that's great. You can use them on every 4, after 4 days rest, after 5 days rest. Mix those guys in, maximize your good starters, minimize your bad starters, keep your bullpen in the mix. I mean, that's on paper how you want to do it. So we'll see, how easy that is to execute in practice. But, certainly I think the Jays showed by moving Tanner Roark, first skipping his start, moving him to the bullpen. Like they're not beholden to the idea of, oh, he's a starter, we're paying him $12 million, therefore he has to pitch every 5th day. Like they're very clearly willing to move off of that idea, which I think is good because he hasn't been effective since 2019. So it's not to say you DFA him. It's not to say you make a rash move, as we talked about last week, but you don't have to start him as often as you start Hyunjin Ryu, because Ryu clearly is way better. So you want to maximize your good pitchers and just keep the other guys around for depth and insurance and extra innings.
So Tanner Roark pitched on April the 6th. In Texas, which was like basically 10 days ago. Like, what's his role on this team?
The extra innings man.
Like, what are you waiting? What are you looking for?
At the 11th inning.
Game? Yeah. Is that it?
That's what it is. Yes.
But so that's an expensive thing to have in your bullpen, and not even just like the salary or whatever, the money's a sunk cost, but also like the roster spot.
Sure. Well, I think that's a role that has to be filled, right? And maybe you think Tommy Malone's better for that role, in which case there's a discussion to be had.
A few guys filling that role.
Yeah, they got 2 right now for sure. But I think you need someone.
I mean, TJ Zoik might be filling that role over the coming weeks, right? Like, if there aren't
not
right
starts
now,
for right? Because he just started, so you need someone. Yeah,
I mean, you got Trent Thornton in there who can give you some length, like. It's just a weird fit right now.
Yeah.
Tanner Roark in this bullpen, no?
It is. It's a weird fit for sure. I just think it's a role that exists where it's like you need someone who's available for that. All right, we're past the 9th, 10th, 11th. Who knows how long this game is going to go? Someone has to fill that role. And so I don't think Roark is a bad candidate for it. or to be a depth starter in case, all right, you got to rain out, you have a doubleheader, someone gets hurt. There's some value in having a stretched out professional pitcher who can do that.
It's just a little weird from a team perspective. You've got the redundancy with him and Malone, and then also you're not you could be using that roster spot in probably a better way. So you're not really doing best by the team. You're not really doing best by Tanner Roark because he has no idea when he's going to pitch. I don't know when the guy throws a bullpen now. How does he stay stretched out? He wants to get better. Like, trust me, he doesn't want to be giving up bombs every time he's on the mound, right? Like, he wants to continue working on what he's been working at to get back to the guy who's been in the past, or to just find a way to survive in the big leagues with diminished stuff, which is something that pitchers can do. It's positive. Look, Tommy Malone throws 84, right? Like, and he's getting guys out. Like, he needs to be working at his craft and trying to find a way to continue his MLB career. So you're not really doing best by him. I don't know. I feel like the rubber's got to meet the road a little bit with the Tanner Roark thing here.
Yeah. So, I mean, you say that there could be, and I kind of like Roark more than Malone, which is kind of damning with faint praise, I guess. But I think he's better suited for that role. But, what would be, what's the alternative, right? To borrow a word from a certain GM, what's the alternative to having Tanner Roark or having someone in that long relief role? What's your are you calling up a bench player? What's the alternative there?
Yeah, I mean, you could bring up another position player. You could also just have the one long relief guy, whether it's Roark or Malone, and then use that other spot for a Castro or a Tice or somebody who can probably just give you a just miss more bats and
so
get higher leverage outs for you in shorter stints.
So you're on board with having one of those guys, though?
Yeah. No, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You need one of those guys. That's my whole point, Ben. They have two.
Yes. Right.
It's redundant.
So I guess in my opinion, then I would say cut Malone when you need to get to that point, just because he's throwing 84.
Right. Tanner Roark is over under Tanner Roark starts over the rest of the season 0.5.
Oh, definitely taking the over.
Definitely
on
taking the
0.5. Yeah.
Starts for the Toronto Blue Jays for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
4.5.
Over. But that's probably
Blue
a
Jays
more
fans
fair.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I hate you for saying that.
I think that's probably a more fair over under, but I could see it going either way at 4.5.
All right. RIP your mentions, buddy. We're going to take a break, but when it continues on At the Letters, we'll wrap up the rest of the odds and ends with Toronto Blue Jays. When it continues on At the Letters. It continues on At the Letters. Arden Zwelling, Ben Nicholson-Smith. Our producers this week are Amal Delich and Mike Tassoni, and it is time now for Keeping It Light, presented by Miller Lite. And this week, I want to give a little shine to Josh Palacios, who is a big leaguer and has been essentially an everyday player for a week, playing over Jonathan Davis, which is probably another topic, by the way. Jonathan Davis finally gets, makes the big league roster out of spring training. He's been watching guys like Billy McKinney and Derek Fisher and Socrates Brito play over him for years, finally on the big league team, and now they won't put him on the field. But anyway, it's about Josh Palacios, who is on the field. He's playing every day and bringing a lot of energy and just a fun guy to watch play. I don't think that this is going to be, a guy who I hope I'm wrong about this, but I don't think this is going to be a 4 or 5 win player someday in the big leagues. I think Josh Palacios kind of is what he is, but it is just kind of fun to watch him have his moment over the last week as the Blue Jays, reached up deep down their outfield depth chart.
Absolutely. And he seems to really be enjoying it, of course, as you'd expect. But, the moment after he gets his first big league hit or scores his first big league run, there's a lot of excitement there. And it's funny because they're playing in this tiny ballpark. And so it feels in some ways, and I've really enjoyed watching the games in Dunedin so far. I think it plays actually pretty well on TV and has a different feel compared to so many games. But despite the setting, this is Major League Baseball, and there's no ambiguity about that whatsoever when you're playing against Mike Trout or Giancarlo Stanton or Aaron Judge or Albert Pujols, right? I mean, these guys bring so much to that Major League environment when they're playing against them. And so for Espinal, for Palacios, for I'm sure some of the young pitchers, maybe a Castro, it's a chance to prove themselves, and Palacios has really made the most of it, and he's playing well. So that's a good sign for the Jays.
The thing that I love is like he's just bringing a little piss and vinegar, man. Like it's just like so. It's funny, like it's kind of like whenever you see a guy who has been in the minors for a long time, really grinded, and then they finally get to the big leagues. Like there is something very infectious about watching them play those first like few MLB games because they're clearly just like so happy to be there. And they try so hard, right? Like you mentioned that first hit, right? Like when you just watched like Josh Palacios just sprinting the whole way up the line trying to beat that thing up out, and I ended up with like a 4 for 4 day at the walk, by the way. But like look at the celebration afterwards, and just like the huge smile and like living in the moment. Like I don't know, man. Like it is like it lifts my spirits a little bit during a pretty rough patch to be living in Toronto right now, man. Because like look, the miners are a grind, dude. Like we'll never understand, but the miners are a grind. And for a guy like Josh Palacios who spent like 5 years living that grind and all the realities of minor league life, like I'm sure this guy has done the 8-9 hour bus rides overnight ahead of like a 10 a.m. first pitch the next day, and you're like you're coming back from the road trip to your 2-bedroom condo you're sharing with like 4 other dudes, and you're tired all the time, and you don't feel your best. Like he's lived that grind, and now he's in the big leagues, and he's clearly enjoying it. I like seeing that, man.
For sure. It's a great story. 5 years ago, he was drafted. So, not the quickest ascent, not the slowest ascent through the minor leagues. He was part of that 2016 class. And, when you look back at it, TJ Zoic was their first rounder that year. So, bit of a, we'll see. I'd say at this point, that looks like a missed opportunity. Then second round, Bo Bichette. That looks like an incredible pick. Fourth round, Palacios. And fifth round, Kevin Biggio, which also looks like a really good pick. So, interesting kind of to look back. Usually it takes about 5 years to get a clear sense of what a draft looks like and what it's going to bring to an organization. But in this case, that looks like a strong group.
And the other thing, so I know Zoic got first round money, and I know Bichette got paid. So I doubt Palacios got much of a bonus, despite being somewhat high in the draft. I don't know if you have it in front of you there, but I think
Yes.
I would. Oh yeah, what do you get?
Well, it's a pretty nice bonus, $438,000. In the context of the Major League Draft, that's not that much, though.
Yeah, that in that context though, that's not a huge bonus.
Right.
It's like, and that kind of gets back to what I was saying. Like this isn't like a super high pick kind of bonus baby type, right? Like $438,000 is not going to last him the rest of his life. A lot of it's probably already gone, man. The agent took a chunk. He's had to pay forever. He's been living in the minors. Taxes, right? Like he's had to, pay for everything that he's done as a human over the last 5 years. Trust me, minor league pay like is not making ends meet. We all know the story of minor leaguers who work as friggin' Uber drivers and personal trainers at Bally's Total Fitness or whatever during the off seasons. So, you live that year over year, and you finally make it to the majors, and even just like the kind of dramatic like lifestyle discrepancy that you get in the big leagues, where it's no longer buses between minor league towns. Now you're like getting on a chartered flight, and like all of your kit is new and fresh, and you got that big league spread in the clubhouse after the game. They didn't just get a bunch of Subway sandwiches or whatever, right? And you got that, you're staying in nice hotels. You're not going to Motel 6s or Holiday Inns anymore. You're at the Ritz-Carlton or wherever. You can tell that Josh Palacios is just enjoying that.
Oh, he definitely seems to be enjoying it, and that's good to see. And like you said, for the Jays, they need him too. It's not just a happy story at the end of a season. Where I'm thinking of John Birdie, maybe 2017 or 18 when he was still with the Jays. John Gibbons points up to the jumbotron and kind of says, "Hey, like you're here." But that was the end of a season where the Jays weren't good. It's different when the Jays are trying to compete, and Palacios is someone. If you're one of 9 people getting at bats for the Blue Jays, then you've got a chance to make an impact.
So speaking of folks from that draft, Bo Bichette. Ben, right now, are you more consumed with the way Bo Bichette is playing offensively, where he is barreling everything that he sees, and he's having these big nights and putting up a bunch of hits and just kind of looking like Bo Bichette as a hitter? Or are you more intrigued by what you're seeing at shortstop from young Bo as he tries to prove that he can be an everyday shortstop at the big league level?
I think I'm more intrigued by the bat because we know he's going to be hitting in the majors for a long time. And man, like the way he's hitting, it's very Bo Bichette. Like he has his own way. It's very different than Vlad Jr. or Kevin Biggio. And we'll get to Vlad a bit later. But, Bo swings. He's a hitter. He wants to hit. And he's been hitting really well, especially of late. I mean, it's not just the 2 home run game and the walk-off homer, although, of course, that's a very impressive example of what he's been doing. But, it's more broadly, he's making really good contact. He's, as we've seen for years now, he's shortening up with 2 strikes, able to hit the ball to all fields. It's impressive. He's a really good offensive player.
Bo's not a big dude. We've both been around him a bit. And he's a professional athlete, but he's not like a Aaron Judge or a Giancarlo Stanton. So the amount, just the exit velocities that he's able to put up with his frame requires him to swing the bat incredibly hard. He has to generate a lot of bat speed, and he has to put everything into every swing. You look at that homer that he won the game on the other day, that walk-off, didn't get all of it, but you can even see when he's swinging at it, he is putting everything into it, and that's how he's able to kind of hit something to the opposite field that carries over the right field fence. A little help from the wind maybe, but my point is, for him to put up the exit velocities that he does with his frame is very impressive, but then to also make the contact that he does with the way that he swings the bat and how hard he swings, you would think there would be more swing and miss in his game just because of his approach, and there isn't that much. So that's the thing that offensively really stands out to me, is the way that he is able to kind of blend these things. And we all know about how he drops the leg kick with 2 strikes and that approach, and how that has benefited him. It's just there is a recipe here, I think, for sustained success as a hitter. I think there's also a recipe for a little bit of streakiness, certainly. But when he's hot, you can see why the hits just pile up and rack up just because of his approach and the way he's putting the ball in play.
Exactly. He's got really good bat to ball skills. He does have that power with that pretty all out max effort swing. That's a lot of fun to watch on those no strike and 1 strike counts. And as long as he hits like this, then the question of where he plays defensively, or who is the Blue Jays shortstop of the future, I don't know. To me, that's a little bit secondary. And it's not to say that defense isn't important, or that I'm not watching his every play defensively, very keenly to see how he's responding, because I am. I do want to see how he's playing. But at this point, if he plays the way he's played for the last week or so, it was a rough start. But if he plays the way he's been playing more recently, I think you live with that. I think that, week by week, if it continues like that, you go ahead. He's still your shortstop. You don't need to worry about 2025, because he could be traded by then. He could be, not that it's likely, but he could have an oblique strain. They could have signed Corey Seager by then. There's so many different possibilities that it's just not worth worrying about.
No, it's not going to be a problem when 2022 opening day shortstop Javi Baez is out there,
right,
and Bo Bichette's at second base or whatever. It's just not worth getting worked up about, man. Look, the defense people, it's like they wish that Ryan Goins was still a Blue Jay. You can have that, right? We can put Ryan Goins at second and John McDonald at short, and you can have some beautiful infield defense and make every play and score 2 runs a game. Or you can have Bo Bichette atop your lineup doing incredible things offensively and making the majority of plays at shortstop. And yes, there will ultimately be inevitably a play here and there that is not made, and it will stand out and it will be glaring, but it's okay if you score 8 runs a game. And that's what the Blue Jays try and do.
Yeah, that's right. And so, they can continue to monitor things. I don't think that means that you give Bo Bichette a lifetime pass of playing shortstop, because, I think those days in baseball are kind of shifting too, as the game shifts to, more of a, moving guys around more freely. You're shifting a lot more. It's less of Derek Jeter is the shortstop and he plays there every single day. That's probably not the direction the game is going. So if Bichette struggles, if he starts to perform really poorly, the conversation changes. And if in 1 or 2 weeks' time he's throwing the ball all over the place and he's not playing shortstop well, we'll have that discussion on ATL, but I don't know that the point to have it is now.
No, it's fine. It's going to sort itself out. The Blue Jays will work it out. If he plays himself off shortstop, okay, it'll just be a second baseman who leads the league in hits, and the Blue Jays will go out and sign somebody this offseason, or they'll have Jordan Groshans come up, or Austin Martin, or Elvis Martinez. It's not like this is a club that looks down its like shortstop prospect list and it's like there's nobody there. It's like everybody is there because they prioritize up the middle, because that's how you get the best athletes. And then if somebody isn't going to be able to be a big league shortstop every day, then you can move them off that position to a corner, to the outfield, because they're really good athletes and they can do things like that. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. came up as a shortstop. Now he's a left fielder. So don't worry about it. Relax. Ben, who's the Blue Jays starting catcher?
I would say it's Danny Jansen.
The last 10 games would suggest that Danny Jansen has started 5 times and Alejandro Kirk has started 5 times. I would say it is a timeshare.
Yeah, I mean, that's evidence that's pretty hard to refute. I think Jansen, by virtue of being Ryu's guy, by virtue of having entered the season with more experience, better defensive skills, I still think he's probably the 1A. But, you're right to say it's probably more of a 1A, 1B than a number 1, number 2 catcher.
Just off of playing time, that's all. Like I kind of feel like the Blue Jays are basically just like, yep, Kirk one day, Jansen the next. Kirk one day, Jansen the next. If anybody wants to step up and take this job and hit, you can have it. The thing is, neither of them are hitting. And Alejandro Kirk struggling at the big league level a little bit right now. Had the homer the other day, but we have not seen some of the same bat to ball and some of the great plate approach that we saw last year in 25 plate appearances. So like all the people that were after Alejandro Kirk had like gone ham over 25 plate appearances and were like, this guy's the greatest hitter to ever walk the earth, all those people now have to say he's actually the worst hitter ever, and he's terrible, because it's a similar sample and it hasn't gone well. So logically that's the argument to make now.
Well, I think, speaking only for myself and not for those unnamed masses that you're referring to there, I think Kirk is still a good hitter. I still think there's reason to believe. He hit that home run the other day against the Yankees. That's a good sign. It was inevitable that he was going to have some slumps. I think we would have said that even at the height of the Alejandro Kirk hype. It's just too difficult to face major league pitching every day or every second day and not struggle at times. So that was going to be something that he encountered, and now we're seeing that. And so his history in the minors, in the majors, in spring training suggests that he has the tools, he has the bat to ball skills, the plate discipline, the power to emerge from those slumps and adjust and still be a good hitter. So that's what I would bet on at this point. But, in the meantime, you're right. They don't have a ton of production from catcher.
But just as if Bo Bichette's my shortstop, I don't really care about his defense that much. I don't really care about the offense from my catcher that much. Like, give me something. Give me the occasional home run. Like, give me the occasional, like give me a good plate appearance, I would say, right? Like, see some pitches. You don't always have to, it doesn't always have to result in a walk. You don't always have to get on base, but like, don't strike out on 3 pitches. Like, see 5, 6 pitches and like work a plate appearance. Give me that, and then just be a really sound defensive catcher, and I'm good. Particularly with the way like this club is constructed, and we'll see. Like if George Springer never plays this year, that's a little bit different. But I assume that he's coming back, and he's just going to lengthen this lineup, and it's going to a lineup that's already like doing okay offensively will get even better. Like just behind the dish, just like block balls, call a good game, frame up pitches, work with your with your pitcher, and game call well. That's what I'm prioritizing.
For me, with Danny Jansen, I agree. That's what the expectation is for Danny Jansen. The offense is a bonus. For Kirk, my expectations are still higher. I still think that he should be someone who, or could be someone, and it's tough to say should for a rookie who's dealing with this for the first time. That's a big ask or demand to put on someone. But he could be someone who has an 800 OPS as a catcher, and it's not easy to do. We just saw the Yankees, and their tandem of Gary Sanchez and Kyle Higashioka is quite good offensively, especially against the Blue Jays, it seems. But when Kirk finds his stride and reaches whatever his equilibrium is in the major leagues, I think he has a chance to be a catcher who gives you more than just a good plate appearance.
Ben, who is the Toronto Blue Jays' best hitter?
Vlady. Yeah.
Top
Vlady.
10 in MLB. Like, legit.
Yeah.
Through a very small sample of 2 weeks. But it is all coming together in a very, very big way. All the potential, all of the things that we have been saying for years and years and years, not really that long, but feels like years and years and years, is finally being realized at the big league level. Every plate appearance has looked better than the last. He just looks tremendous. There's no other way to say it.
He looks amazing. Yeah, it's everything seems to be coming together for Vlady. It's really reminiscent of, stories that we've heard on this podcast and elsewhere from John Schneider about, hey, this is what Vlady was like at Double-A that year he won Eastern League MVP, and it was like you couldn't fool him. You couldn't control at-bats against him. He was just hitting lasers everywhere, and we're starting to see contact that's 110, 115, 120 miles per hour off the bat on a regular basis. And then he combines that with tremendous plate discipline that we did not see in 2019, that we did not see last year. He is showing much more ability to determine what's a ball or a strike, make really good decisions when it comes to what he's going to attack. And when he does swing, he's making great contact. So that's just the offensive side. We can get to the base running, get to the defense. But when you look at Vlady offensively, this is a player who is an impact bat, the best hitter in a lineup that has a chance to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's the old Vlady Jr. again,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the 19-year-old version of Vlady Jr., right? Like it's the guy who's like doing Juan Soto stuff in the box. He's shaking his head when he takes like a pitcher's pitch for a ball just off the plate, and he's like, tapping his foot, and like you can see him like thinking along with the pitcher, and you can see him having a plan, and he's not deviating from it. Like that's the biggest difference. Is I think last season, a ball strike call wouldn't go his way, or he'd chase something that he knows he shouldn't, and then he would expand later in the plate appearance. He would deviate from his plan. He would get frustrated and get away from his approach. We're not seeing that this year, man. We're not seeing that. We're seeing him like think along with the pitcher. If he chases a slider early in a plate appearance, he's probably not going to chase it again later in the plate appearance. Like he's going to learn from what happened and kind of digest what the pitcher is showing him and make those pitch-to-pitch adjustments that made him so great as a 19-year-old. When like evaluators saw him doing that stuff as a teenager, making pitch-to-pitch adjustments, having an approach, being as advanced as he can be, that's why everybody was like, holy crap, this kid could be good, because he's already doing this stuff at 19, and we all know he hits the ball hard as hell when he gets a pitch to hit on the plate, and he can just like absolutely punish strikes when he can get to them. You combine that with the plate approach, and you might have like a really, really special hitter here. There was just a little bit of an adjustment period, I guess, like in the big leagues, just kind of getting used to how he was being approached and how pitchers were attacking him, and to things maybe not coming quite as easily as they did in the minors. But raw tools are there. The exit velocities are huge. And now if you layer in that ability to execute a selective, disciplined plate approach and make quick adjustments, look out.
Well, that's it. That's, your words right there. It kind of reminds me of something someone said a couple of years ago with Vlady when he was not in his best condition. And the person said, if Vlady is ever able to get into better shape, then watch the blank out. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Like it's really a fearsome hitter that I am sure opposing pitchers do not want to face. Vlad Jr. right now, he's playing so well. And then when he does hit the ball, if he has to leg a double into a triple, if he has to score from third on a wild pitch, he can do that because he's moving better. And he's playing better defense at first base, showing incredible flexibility. That's probably the most notable part, is just his splits and how he's been doing that. But beyond just that kind of impressive gymnastic feat, he's making better decisions when it comes to which balls that he goes after, making better decisions when it comes to where he might throw a baseball. So we're seeing a more complete player, and that's something that we suspected could happen and we're waiting to see, but we just hadn't seen it until this year.
Yeah, I remember somebody telling me on one of my many journeys to see Vlady in the minor leagues. I forget where it was. It might have been Lansing or Bluefield or wherever. Somebody said to me, "Look, if this guy like works really hard and like minds his p's and q's and does everything he needs to do away from the game in terms of recovery and preparation and just like being a high level professional athlete, he could be a Hall of Famer. If he doesn't do that stuff, he'll just merely be like a good big league hitter. Like the floor is like." Good big league hitter, you know? So the ceiling is through the roof. And yeah, it does seem like now Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is really taking care of a lot of those things kind of around just what goes into foreplay, what just four plate appearances in a game. He's really taking care of all that ancillary stuff. And I think if you're the Blue Jays, you hope that the results that he's seeing and the success that he's having and just kind of the confidence and good vibes that he's feeling encourage him to do more of that and to take it to the next level. Because we talk about, some like it's not like the conditioning issue is over. It's not like the preparation recovery stuff is just like fixed now. Like that's an ongoing process over years and years and years, right? Like him maintaining his conditioning and staying in good shape and like being in a place where he's not going to be super fatigued and not getting hurt and suffering injuries. That is a continual process for the rest of his career. It's not just something that happened in one off season between 2020 and 2021. That is something that he's going to have to continue working at. So if you're the Blue Jays, I think you just hope that this positive feedback encourages him to continue doing that and to not fall off track again, which could create a setback.
Exactly. I think that all makes sense because the gap is pretty big, right? The gap between what Vladdy has been for the first 2 weeks of the season and what we saw for the first 2 years of his major league career, those are two pretty different players. And the current version is way better. So I guarantee the Blue Jays want to see him continuing to put in that work because, as you say, it will take continued work behind the scenes to get to the results that we see on the field.
That's going to be it for us. I want to thank our producers, Amal Delich and Mike Tassoni. He's Ben Nicholson Smith. I'm Arden Zwelling. We'll talk to you next week on At the Letters.